Thank you, everybody, for coming to the Aaron Torres Podcast YouTube page. If you could do me a quick favor, if you do enjoy the video that you came here to watch, do me a favor, go ahead and hit that little red subscribe button at the bottom of the screen. It really does help my audience grow. It really does help this channel grow. It means more than you realize. So go ahead, hit that little red button. Also, remember, full episodes of the Aaron Torres Podcast, wherever you download your podcast, Apple, Spotify, etc. Now, here is the video that you came here for.
Back to be back. Do want to switch gears. Do want to talk a little college hoops recruiting. And we really haven't talked a ton of recruiting on this show over the last couple weeks for one very simple reason. The bottom line is, at the end of the day, there really hasn't been that much news to share. Most of the top players obviously were recruited over the last couple years. Most of the best players really did commit sometime in the spring, summer, or fall. And over the last couple weeks, as the signing period opened last week, most of the best players have signed at their school and have moved on. Not much news when the number 11 player in America commits in June and signs in October or November. So we really haven't talked a ton about it, but there was one piece of news centering around one star player that we have been waiting on for months and in some cases years that finally came to a close on Monday. That player, his name is DJ Wagner, the number one high school player in the class of 2023, according to 24/7 Sports. And after a long, winding recruitment that I think at three different points, we saw three different teams that we thought were going to take his commitment. Two teams, three different points. I'll explain in a minute. DJ Wagner, number one player in America. He does commit to the University of Kentucky. And so let's give credit to John Calipari. This was not an easy recruit to close. This was not an easy recruitment in general, but he gets the number one player in America. He basically seals up the number one class in America. And I will just tell you this, one of the best commitments that he's ever gotten in terms of the work that had to go in, putting a bow on one of the best classes, a cherry on top of one of the best classes that he has ever signed at the University of Kentucky. Great day to be a Wildcat. Great day to be John Calipari. You know, really quickly with DJ Wagner, I think most people know the backstory. Most people know probably him as a player as well. But a 6'3", 6'4" guard, really good player. I don't think he had a great summer this year on AAU and Team USA. But the bottom line is basically as long as they've been ranking players in the class of 2023, DJ Wagner is at or near the top. 6'3" guard, can do it all, can get into the paint, makes plays for others, hits open threes, good athlete, maybe not elite athlete, but a really good player and a guy that I think is going to be able to step in next year in college basketball and contribute right away. So good win for John Calipari, but more importantly, it was a good win given the circumstances. And I think we've discussed them before, but let me just give you the 30-second rundown of what John Calipari had to go through to get this kid's commitment. Okay. So keep in mind, so this kid's name, DJ Wagner, I think you're probably a Kentucky fan. If you're watching, you know the backstory, but I bring it up to say that this is the son of DeJuan Wagner, who was John Calipari's first big recruit at Memphis. And so when I said there were three different times where we thought three schools were in the lead, the first was that forever we thought John Calipari in Kentucky, it was a done deal. Don't even bother recruiting him. His dad played at Memphis for John Calipari. He's been around Kentucky basketball essentially since John Calipari got there. His dad's brought him to camps up there, all that good stuff. It's a done deal. Don't even bother recruiting him. Well, then Louisville hired Kenny Payne, the new head coach, and Kenny Payne hired his grandfather, Milt Wagner, who is a former teammate of his at the University of Louisville. And so you talk about, family ties here. You have a dad who played for John Calipari. You have a grandfather coaching alongside, and I know he's in an alumni relations role, so he's not technically a coach, but coaching alongside his best friend at that school's biggest rival. And so basically you had a Hatfields and a McCoys kind of deal going on between Louisville and Kentucky, specifically pulling the two sides of the family, whether it would be to go play for the coach who coached dad DeJuan Wagner or go play for the grandfather Milt Wagner. And for a long time, it looked like Louisville was in control. Kentucky has it early. Louisville has it probably in the spring. But then credit John Calipari, man. He kept fighting. Over time, you start to realize that anybody that really kind of was locking in on Louisville as a done deal, it was far from it. And after a long winding road, John Calipari finally got his man. So when I look at reactions, a couple things stand out. One, first of all, credit old Coach Cal, okay? I know everybody wants to bury Coach Cal, and all he does is recruit. He doesn't win at the highest level, blah, 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 this and that. First of all, we've talked about it a million times. This guy this is year 14 for John Calipari. I would argue that, and this is independent of this kid's commitment. I would argue that in 12 of those years, he had a team good enough to win a national championship, okay? 12 of 14 years, he's had a team good enough to win a national championship. The only ones being, the year they made the NIT after the first national championship and probably the 2020-2021 season in the middle of COVID. And so I bring it up because everybody wants to bury John Calipari. All he does is put teams on the court that are good enough to win a title. And I'll tell you, this recruitment wasn't easy, right? Back and forth. It would have been easy for him to back off. It would have been easy for him to wave the white flag when Kenny Payne got to Louisville. And instead, he kept fighting, battling. Obviously, getting Nike on your side to sign him as an NIL client was a big win for John Calipari. But listen, I just give him credit, man. Guy's 60-something years old. He is still fighting like he's 28 for the best players in the country. Like no stone unturned. He was in Camden the first day of the fall period when you could be on campus visiting players. And so I just give him a ton of credit for his effort that he put in. Another thing that comes to mind, credit to the assistant coaches, right? Because here's the bottom line. If you remember, and this is probably credit to Cal too, and Torres, all you do is say nice things about Cal. Well, criticize Cal for what you want. But after that disastrous 2020-2021 season, Cal said everything has to change. That was the COVID year. Kentucky goes 9-15, 9-16, whatever the record was. But one of the changes that he made was he went out and completely shook up his coaching staff. Couple guys left, couple guys took other jobs, but he brought back in Orlando Antigua, his longtime right-hand man, and he brought in a guy named Chin Coleman from Illinois as well, two of the elite recruiters in all of college basketball. And so I bring it up. Why it matters is because you bring them in the spring of 2021, okay? So the 2022 recruiting class, they obviously did a great job. They had a guy, I won't name his name, that was committed, that was the number one player. He ends up going pro without playing a game. You have Casey Wallace, who's playing really well right now. But it was 2023 where those guys, those assistant coaches that you paid all that money to, you're either going to sink or swim. And not only did they swim by getting DJ Wagner, but this now closes out the number one class in America and one of the best classes in recent history. Now, look, I can't promise what they're going to do once they get there. Obviously, Kentucky won a national championship based on the backs of a one-and-done number one ranked freshman class. They had some veterans with them, right? Duke won a national championship with a number one ranked class the previous year, had some veterans with them. So I can't sit here and promise you anything. But this is as impressive of a group as any in recent memory, okay? So DJ Wagner in the 24/7 composite is the number one player in America. The number two player in America is a guy by the name of Justin Edwards, who's actually been on this podcast. Don't know how much you remember about Justin Edwards, but Justin Edwards is committed to Kentucky. Been on this podcast. We talked about it. The number 6 ranked player in America, Aaron Bradshaw, committed to Kentucky as of this morning, had not signed, but was obviously waiting for DJ Wagner is going to sign. You also have the number 9 ranked player in America, Robert Dillingham, a guard, committed as well. And Reed Shepard, the number 29 ranked player, according to 24/7 Sports Composite, committed also. So in total, for those of you who aren't great at math, we are talking about 4 of the top 10 players in America, including 3 of the top 6. You talk about a loaded recruiting class for John Calipari. This is one of the best ones he's ever put together in a career of putting together elite recruiting classes. Again, it doesn't promise anything, but as we've talked about on this show time and time again, there's a difference between signing a good class with a 5-star or 2 and then 4 stars and signing the types of classes like this where you have elite frontline NBA talent coming in and you have guys that can contribute in college basketball right away. I talk about it all the time, right? But in the NBA, I think we all understand that there is a difference between getting the number 1 pick in the NBA draft and getting like the 11th pick, right? Number 1, you get an Anthony Davis, a Zion Williamson, a Kyrie Irving, and some of these guys have had whatever kind of careers. They're all really good players, though. LeBron James, obviously. That's the difference between the number 1 player and then who was the number 11 player in last year's draft. Oh, we don't remember because it doesn't matter because they turn into a role player. And so I bring it up because in college basketball, it's no different. There's a difference between some of the classes that John Calipari has signed recently, where you have like the 8th ranked player and the 11th ranked player and the 26th ranked player, and getting the elite of the elite. These are the kind of players that you can build a team around. You can build a Final Four team around, as we saw at Duke last season with Paolo Banchero and Trevor Keels and all those guys, some of the early Kentucky teams. And so I just give John Calipari a ton of credit here. Went out, revamped his staff 2 years ago, said we need to get back to recruiting the best of the best, and that's exactly what he did. This season, they once again have a team good enough to win a national championship with Oscar Tshiebwe, but I'll take it a step further. With this recruiting class and probably a couple returnees off this year's squad, that's going to be a team that is, again, in 2023, 2024, among the best in college basketball and good enough to win a national championship. Doesn't guarantee anything, but this is a huge day for John Calipari, a huge day for Kentucky basketball, as they have gotten a commitment from the number 1 player in America, DJ Wagner. And I'm telling you, they are going to start next year in the top 5, and they might have the best player in college basketball in 2023, 2024.